Indigenous leaders launched $2.1 billion class action lawsuits against Canada over lack of drinking water.
Here's a summary of the article.
Arguing the federal government failed to provide clean water and forced communities to live in a manner consistent with life in developing countries, they are suing the government for $2.1 billion damages, the costs associated with years of bottled water trucked and a water treatment system for the whole community. Despite being one of the most water-rich nations in the world, for generations Canada has been unwilling to guarantee access to clean water for Indigenous peoples. It's unacceptable in a country that is financially one of the most wealthy in the world, and water-rich, and the reality is that many communities don't have access to clean water, the federal Indigenous Services Minister, Mark Miller, told The Guardian in an interview. If you are anywhere else in Canada and you turn on the tap, then you are protected by safe drinking water regulations, said Amanda Claising, a water researcher at Human Rights Watch. In others, reactions between organic material and chemicals used to purify water can create unsafe water. The community of Neskantaga in northern Ontario has been under a water advisory since 1995, researchers found, despite having a water treatment plant. In 2016, there were 105 communities with long-term drinking water advisories in place, meaning the water had been unsafe to use or consume for at least a year.
This post received a score of 61,000, with an upvote ratio of 87%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
I guess the biggest problem is how Canada deals with water. Water is handled at the municipal level where property taxes mainly fund the water and sewage with the odd grant from the province or federal. I grew up near Curve Lake, Peterborough, and still have a cottage just a tad north of it. What I don't get is why not spend the 10 to 20k a well and make some wells. That's what the vast majority of non-reserve folks do around that area. You can also put in water filtration systems and pull from the lake, but they're a bit more work to maintain vs a well.
Because ISC is in charge of drinking water on reserves, and unless they contract it out to the reserve itself, the reserve can't implement their own municipal water system, both legally and financially, as ridiculous as that sounds. It's been this way for over 100 years and clearly needs to change. But the feds, by maintaining and not being willing to give up control of utilities on reserves, also take on the responsibility of providing those utilities. When utilities aren't provided, like now, that responsibility equates to fault.
So the Canadian government has control over reserve land? I always thought they operated independently.
That's the general idea, but utilities fall under old laws that differ from that general independence, and for whatever reason the feds seem keen to keep their power over utilities. It's a big part of the reason that the drinking water is an issue and why the feds have promised for so long to fix it. They're in charge, so it's both their fault that there is no safe drinking water, and their responsibility to make sure it's created.
In a way it makes sense that the federal government would want strict control of the utilities installed and operated in Canada. Gas and electricity are no joke and should have government oversight. I feel like this could be solved pretty easily on a household level. A UV filtration system like ones used on a farmhouse can be installed for around $500. Why not just give a tax redemption for every house on a reserve that installs one?
So I'd have to assume that there aren't any property taxes. Through the treaties and related legislation, First Nations are wholly dependent on the federal and provincial governments for services and funding. The levels of government need to step up and make good on their treaty commitments, as well as changing legislation in ways that gives FN governments more control of things like utilities.
I live in California, and water rights here are also a clusterfuck. The state allocates how much water each municipality can use per year, and most municipalities in California use a private company to maintain water infrastructure and billing. Cities can go into water debt with the state and they're supposed to pay it back by reducing future water use or using reclaimed, recycled wastewater that's treated a whole bunch as water supply.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.